going to go over the tabernacle. The tabernacle in the wilderness. What Yahweh had Moshe and the children build. Let's go to Exodus 25:1. And Yahweh said to Moshe, speak to the people of Israel that they may take for me a contribution. From every man whose heart moves him, you shall receive the contribution for me. And this is the contribution that you shall receive from them: gold, silver, and bronze, blue and purple, and scarlet yarns, and fine twined linen, goat's hair, tanned ram's skins, goat skins, Arcadia wood. So all these things he said to bring into him, right? So we see the things that they brought. And they brought so much that he had to tell them to stop. And this again is a free will offering, a free will of what they brought. We have the lid of atonement. Atone means to cover, to cancel, to cleanse, forgive, be merciful, pardon, purge, reconcile. The mercy seat. Now, who do you think represents sitting in the middle of the mercy seat? Yahweh, of course, right? We'd also have to understand that Yeshua is in here. So, putting this all together, we're going to go through the tabernacle, the things of the tabernacle, what's in the tabernacle, around the tabernacle, and we're going to try to figure out what all this means, what all this represents. We pretty much know that they would come once a year to do atonement, right? So on that lid, they would come and do atonement. So real clearly, first of all, we see Yeshua. Knowing Yahweh never changes. Knowing Yahweh is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Knowing that they said, oh, I've waited on you, oh Yeshua. They've waited on their salvation. Yes, back in the Old Testament, that they're talking about Yeshua. Then it's talking about in Ezekiel, about the different things. Well, before we get too far, let's just keep on going. And we're trying to understand not only the tabernacle, but its purpose, what's in it, what things represent. But instead of trying to make different, I believe in putting some things together as they go, because the tabernacle is very, very important. It's very important to understand. And if you make one video about the tabernacle and then another about the Messiah and then another about, if you're not careful, it's kind of gets scattered, I believe. So this, I'm trying to mix in the Messiah, Yeshua, the tabernacle, and all the utensils, everything, what it represents and what it represents in Yeshua's time and what it will represent further. So let's see if we connect all these dots and see how far we can find it, where we can go. Because we know the lamb and we know the priest would come into there once a year on the 10th day, on the Day of Atonement. And that is why I submit to you that as well, that the calendars do matter. People say, well, the dates don't matter. Well, if the date doesn't matter on the 10th of Atonement, you just missed Atonement. You just missed the tabernacle. You just missed what he said to miss. So putting it all together, and yes, Yahweh, as we see, wants perfection. Because he didn't send his son, Yeshua, the Lamb, for our atonement so we could sin. So we see very clearly what's going on, what's happening. Let's move forward and see. Yeshua came. And when he came, he said, behold, the Spirit, the Ruach of Yahweh is upon me. And he said all this is fulfilled. This is where we get it mixed up. Or the church, I should say, churchianity, gets it mixed up, that what was fulfilled. What was fulfilled is the lamb sacrifice. What was fulfilled is the blood atonement. What is being fulfilled is what he is doing, who he is, all those scriptures of who they said he was, not himself. He came to do his Father's business, right? So doing his Father's business, he was doing the priest, and he was doing the high priest. Instead of bringing abominable things in there, instead of selling and doing all the abominable things they was doing, he came to set the stuff straight. He came to show them the tabernacle. Now we also have to realize, when we're speaking of this tabernacle, we're speaking of the tabernacle above. So is it above, so shall it be below. Vice versa, right? When we pray, we can bind things and he will bind them in heaven. We can loose blessings, we can loose things, and they will be loosed here. The problem that we come into over and over and over is very few prophets. And the ones that are the prophets, most people don't want to hear them. And the world can easily shove them underneath the rug and say, no views for you, buddy. We don't like what you got to say. It's no different than what we see on sitcoms. If you love Married with Children and everybody likes it, and it, guess what? It's a big deal. Everybody talks about it. But if it's something else that nobody's ever heard of, get rid of it. The same thing through history. So Yeshua come to do what? To put his blood as an everlasting sacrifice. He talks of the bulls and goats and the blood and the different things. So he came to shed his blood so that we could be atoned for. But again, make no mistake about it. If we do not get this right, if we don't come, I believe, on the right dates, if we don't do what he says, then what are we? Are we no different than the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and even worse? We're making up our own religion. We're making up our own traditions. We're making up our own laws. And we get to say, so essentially we become our own God. Because I say I can do this. I say I can do this. And I say I can do that. And we're taking the very blood and making it null and void. Not that we can, but what he says is if you continue in sin, there is no sacrifice for you. This is the words of Yahweh. So we have to be careful when we say we're going to do it our way, or the church continue churchianity. I keep saying that because the church is the church. There is still the assembly of Yahweh. There still is the people in the congregation of Yahweh. And they still atone. They still have his blood. They still have his witness. The problem becomes is when people say, I go to church and it's on Sunday and it's doing this and they're doing everything but what he said to do. Now, moving on. The great earthquake. What's this got to do with the tabernacle? Everything. Just hold on there. We're getting there. Yeshua, and it was a stake, not this, but trying to find the different pictures and put this together. It was a stake. Yeshua was crucified on a stake. Now it said when they hid the ark, Solomon in his temple, they hid it underneath here. For the atonement, for this to work, the atonement has to be upon the ark. The blood was upon the ark. It was sprinkled upon the ark, right? Of the covenant. And Yahweh in a pillar of fire and his Shekinah glory would come down, and that was the atoning power. They even say that the scarlet thread would turn white. Yahweh can do anything. So, is that really unbelievable? I'm sure there was some type of sign, because the priest didn't die, because they didn't die. There was a sign that he accepted that blood. He accepted that until the next year. Now, moving forward, if that had to be, and Yahweh does not change, I am Yahweh, that is my name. I do not change, therefore ye sons of Jacob are not consumed. If he doesn't change, then why would he change here? This is what Christianity teaches. It's all changing. It's changing. It's changing. It's changing till we don't know what we're looking at. But if it doesn't change, then Yeshua's blood came down on the right side of the ark and touched the ark. He, as the perfect lamb, as the sacrifice, came down on the ark. What was the great earthquake about? Well, the great earthquake opened up the earth where his blood could go down and go into and top of the ark. Make sense? So it came down into the ark, and then the whole world's sins are atoned for. Now this is where we get back into the tabernacle. This is a form of the Ark of the Covenant. What was in the ark? The manna. See, the ark itself is a container of what? A container of witnesses. The bud, right? The branch that budded, the manna, and the commandments. 3 witnesses we have in a box. Why was it a box? What do we put in a box? What does it look like? Kind of like a coffin, right? It was what we know as a coffin. So wouldn't it make sense that he was trying to show us for the future something's going to happen and there's something else missing because we got this great big box and we put this stuff in the side. What else are we going to put in this box? Behold hand, behold nail. Folks, they should have seen this coming for a mile. They should have known what was happening. And maybe, probably, the prophets did. When they prophesied that there's one that's going to come and he's going to be perfect and he's going to shed his blood for all the world. Well, if you know the atonement, if you know the tabernacle, if you know what's in the tabernacle, if you know how the tabernacle works, you see what I'm getting at? If you know all this is representation of being inside the camp, outside the camp, it's all representation of atonement for your sins. It's representation of Yahweh. It's representation of Yeshua. Who are these? Why is the point? What's the point of the angels on top of it? Have you ever seen the 2 witnesses? Yahweh himself is so justified, is so much into justice, that is so much into right ruling. He says, let us go down and see about Sodom and Gomorrah. Let us go down and see if what those prayers and what they're saying. Let us go down and judge it rightfully and see if all that abomination they're talking about is happening. So what do you think is going to happen to this world before he sends his wrath? Probably the exact same thing. What did he say when he made man? Let us make man. So these angels are more than just cherubs on a golden box. These angels are his witnesses. These angels, Gabriel and Michael, are going to come again. And these are the 2 witnesses. They're going to come upon this earth. Same as the beginning as in the ending. Nothing under the sun. Nothing changes. If we would learn and know our Bible, we wouldn't be so duped. We wouldn't be so taught wrong, because we couldn't be, because we would say, no, no, no. This is what I'm looking for. Instead of Jonathan Kahn getting on there and saying, oh, you know what, the 4 blood moons and this and this and this and this and this and all that nonsense. And we go, ooh, that sounds tasty. I like that little morsel. That sounds great. In 2020, and nothing happens. In 2015, nothing happens. And who cares of the blood moon? It's not a blood moon. That itself is a false statement. It's not blood. It's red. It's orange. It's yellow. It's no different if it happened before. It will probably happen again. If the world didn't fall apart then, it probably won't fall apart now. We can't change things to make it fit our nonsense. A blood moon is a one-time occurrence. when it turns to blood, we're going to watch it. We're going to see it. We're going to know it. So, these two witnesses, Gabriel and Michael, are the witnesses of Yahweh. And that's why they're here. Because they are witnessing every year of atonement. Is this blood defiled? Or is your blood straight? Or is your blood corrupted? Life is in the blood, folks. He chose these animals to atone for us. But Yeshua come to atone for us. So don't you think that maybe these two angels was right there with Yeshua? That they had to make sure and confirm that this was a witness that Yeshua's blood, Yeshua himself was pure, and he was worthy as the high priest to take away our sins. Isn't that amazing? Maybe you've never heard that. But it's amazing that Yahweh does things, and if we're taught right, if they was taught right, they probably seen these things coming. They yearn for seeing Yeshua, and most of them never seen him, obviously. So when that glory came upon there, now what does this got to do with Yeshua? Well, there is the, what is it? The Turin, the shawl of Yeshua. And I've run into people who said that they have seen it. They had pictures of it. And when Yeshua was laying there, they placed that blanket, they placed that cloth around him, right? He went and took him to the rich man's tomb. He took him down and he went and put him in his tomb. When they put him in there, they're saying that it would take like a nuclear bomb, a quick instant of a flash, to put that on that shawl, to put that facing, to put his outline. It would be like a nuclear bomb went off in his body to make that happen. We see that the fire of Yahweh would come down. We see that the glory, the Shekinah glory of Yahweh would come down into the tabernacle, that a very pillar of fire they would follow, that they would see. So is it so unreasonable to say that when Yeshua died, when this happened, when his blood came down, the exact same thing happened as the exact same thing always happened when they had the tabernacle? Why did it not happen in the temple? Because it was corrupted. Yeshua shows us their temple, their priest, and their priest handing over Yeshua to Pilate. If that ain't corruption, folks, you handed over an innocent man. He should have been put to death. He didn't do anything. Yeshua was innocent according to Pilate's own mouth. I find nothing guilty. I find no fault. I find nothing wrong with this man. And they cried, crucify him anyway. Folks, wow. Again, they should have known. The pot of manna, the commandment, 613. Remember, it's front and back in sapphire stone. And we're all going to see this. Again, we're grown, we're taught that we don't have to do nothing but have faith. But he is a visual Elohim. He is a visual. They seen it. We are going to see it. We're going to see that rod of Aaron. We're going to see that it budded. We're going to see these things. And we're going to see the very ark. I don't think I would touch it. I don't think I'd get around it. I don't think I would do anything other than what you're supposed to do. All these people, I can come down to the veil. I can come into the veil. I can do. You better be careful what you think you can do. Because that fire of Yahweh, and if you read here, it talks of the things that they brought had to go through the fire, right? And see that you make them after the pattern for them which is being shown to you on the mountain. Exodus 25 and 40. He told him to make this what he's shown to him on the mountain. Now, some of these things we can put together. Some of these things we can vividly see. We can have the dimensions, if you will, what it was made of, and some things. So, what we have to understand, though, is in the time of Moses, Yahweh gave these without a planner, without a booklet, without tablets, to Moshe only. Do you know why? Because if he would have gave him a booklet, guess what would have probably happened? Aaron, Miriam, who else might have come down and said, we can build this. Go sit down, old man. Yahweh knows what he's doing. So I would suggest to you that everybody looking for the great Exodus, part 2, if you will, that if Yahweh dedicates one man, like he did with Moshe, we're going to have to stop the murmuring, complaining, whining, and I can read my Bible myself, because it's not going to work. It's not going to work. If everything happens just like it did then, you know, everybody wants to get back to this or get on with that, but if everything happens like it did in the wilderness and tabernacles, and one man is appointed, how many people is going to die right from the get-go? 3,000, 10,000, 3 million? How many people are going to die right in the beginning? How many? How many is going to be the example? Don't let it be you. Beloved, don't let it be you. Because if we see what happened then, and that's going to be a pale comparison of what this is. We're not even going to talk about that Exodus anymore. We're going to talk about this Exodus. Can you imagine? We're just basically going to forget about that Exodus, that tabernacle, what they did, because this one's going to be so much more. I would submit to you that if you're a murmuring, complaining, I can read my Bible for myself type of person, you better start learning there's prophets and there's people, and if Yahweh's called them, not a false prophet, stay thee far away from the false prophet, but if Yahweh's called the prophet, you better get yourself into training that if Yahweh says so, you better listen. Because if you're one of those ones that says, hey, I can read my Torah, and it's the true prophet, and it's the true Exodus, you just failed. And no telling what. If he's going to swallow up, usually he does a new thing on these things, right? He did a new thing to prove himself there. So let's go on. Hebrews 8 and 5. They serve a copy and a shadow of the heavenly things. For when Moses was about to erect the tent, he was instructed by Elohim, saying, see that you make everything according to the pattern that was shown to you on the mountain. Right? Now let's go and talk a little bit more about what was made. Exodus 38 and 8. He made the basin of bronze and its stand of bronze from the mirrors of the ministering women who ministered in the entrance of the tent of meeting. Right? We have to understand that these things was not only made, they was made to be mobile. The stakes, the ropes, all the parts, as beautiful as it was, the fence, all these had to be mobile. And they had to be sturdy enough to withstand the desert, the wilderness. So it had to be, we can take it down, we can put it up. We can take it down, we can put it up. So these was not cavemen as the world has us to believe. These, if you've ever been in a tent, if you've ever been in the wilderness, if you've ever taken a tent up and down a few times, it has to be sturdy or it's junk. And it falls apart. And it's just not fun to work with, right? So the outer gate of the tabernacle, it had poles and it had the fence to keep people away. Because people, that is another thing. Yahweh's always trying to keep us away from harm. If you'll see the whole fence around it. Because no one could withstand his glory. No one can stand in his presence without his permission. Moshe, the high priest, Aaron, they have to be bidden to come. In this world, sadly, we don't have to think we do anything. We think we're going to come straight to the king and his throne and talk to him and do this and do that, which we can pray. Don't get me wrong. But if we're not guarded, if our mouth isn't right, if our mind isn't right, if we come to him any old way and forget he's the king, that's why he has put fences up for us. That's the whole point of this tabernacle and atonement, is before you come to me, cleanse yourself. Before you come to me, to Shiva, before you come to me, make sure your mouth is right. The fence pillars stand in bronze sockets. Bronze represents his judgment. He has set a day when he will judge the world with fairness. He's not going to again, even though he's Yahweh, and he has every right to judge any way he wants to, he still uses Michael and Gabriel. He still has them as his right and left hand angels. And they're going to come. It's not going to be Elijah. It's not going to be, that's reincarnation. Nowhere do we see Elijah and this one and that. We hear of that because we have to comprehend it. But it's not Elijah. Just like Yeshua wasn't Elijah. Yochanan was not Elijah. The Spirit, that force, that I will not back down, I will go to my death, you will cut my head off, and that's that. That Spirit, not the person. Because if it's the person, we're talking reincarnation. Now, for being perfect, Elijah gets to come back and be killed in the street. No. Is that justice? No way is that justice. I lived a perfect, circumspect life. You carried me away. I didn't know death. And you're going to bring me back and kill me in front of the world? Come on, folks. Don't buy that kind of stuff. And Moses, he died. We know he died. He couldn't make it to the promised land. Is he going to come back? That's reincarnation. Well, who else have we got? Enoch? Again, for perfection, for living, for being close to Yahweh? Come on. We got to stop with the traditions of men and what people say. That's not righteous judgment. That is not righteous judgment. So then what do you get if you mess up? You get to go in hell and be dipped in, thrown back out, brought back, killed in front of everybody, brought back, thrown in hell, and then nuked in the face? Man, them people got it coming. See, there's one life, and what we do with it is what we will be judged for. Good or bad, every word that comes out of our mouth. And this is what it represents even from the outside. This is before you even come to meet with Yahweh, before you even come into his presence, you're going to be judged that you're even worthy to come within the tabernacle. Right? And we see this in the ending too.